The bench was cold beneath me, worn smooth by years of waiting students and anxious parents. It had been over 2 months since I last sat here, but it might as well have been yesterday. The old oak tree still cast the same dappled shadows across. The concrete and the school bell still rang with that same tinny echo that bounced off the brick facade. Everything was the same, except for the fact that Nathan wasn't here anymore. I pulled my jacket tighter around me as the autumn wind picked up, rustling the golden brown leaves at my feet. A few students lingered on the school grounds laughing and shoving each other playfully as they made their way to waiting cars or toward the sidewalk leading into town. Their normal lives continued, unaware of how a single absence could create such a void. I came here every Tuesday after work. Same time, same bench. Sometimes I'd stay for 10 minutes, sometimes for an hour. The school security guard had noticed my weekly ritual, initially approaching with suspicion but eventually offering a sympathetic nod when I explained that I was just remembering someone. What I wouldn't give to hear his laugh again, I whispered to myself, watching as the last bus pulled away from the curb. Nathan and I had been inseparable from the moment we met in this very courtyard 3 years ago. I was the new English teacher, fresh out of grad school, and desperately trying to appear more confident than I felt. He was the veteran science teacher, who found me struggling with an armful of paperbacks that had spilled across the pavement. "Need a hand?" he'd asked, already kneeling to gather the scattered books. Unless this is some experimental teaching method I haven't heard about yet. His smile had crinkled the corners of his eyes and something in my chest had shifted, like puzzle pieces clicking into place. A sudden gust of wind brought me back to the present, scattering a handful of leaves across my shoes. I checked my watch. I'd been sitting here for 20 minutes already, lost in memories. I should probably head home soon. My apartment waited for me, empty, quiet, with half-packed boxes still sitting in corners because I couldn't bring myself to finish what we'd started together. Then I saw her, walking purposefully across the schoolyard, her silver-streaked hair pulled back in a tight bun, was Marion Mills, Nathan's mother. My heart lurched painfully in my chest. We hadn't spoken since the funeral, where grief had made us both strangers to each other. She was carrying a cardboard box, clutching it tightly to her chest as if afraid its contents might escape. I considered leaving, avoiding what would surely be an awkward encounter, but she had already spotted me. Her steps faltered briefly before she straightened her shoulders and continued in my direction. I stood as she approached, uncertain what to say. "You still come here?" she said. Not a question, but a quiet observation. "Every Tuesday," I admitted, my voice smaller than I intended. Marion nodded, studying my face with eyes so like her son's that it made my chest ache. "I thought I might find you here. Nathan's father and I have been cleaning out his apartment." She gestured to the box in her arms. "We found some things that belong to you." The box wasn't large, maybe the size you'd use to pack a few books. My name was written across the top in Nathan's distinctive handwriting, the letters slightly tilted to the right, just as they had been on the notes he used to leave on my desk or tucked into my bag. "I thank you," I managed, reaching for it with trembling hands. "There's more," Marion said, not releasing the box yet. Her expression softened with something I couldn't quite read. "We found something else. Something I think you should know." "About?" My stomach tightened with apprehension. What could there possibly be that I didn't already know? Nathan and I had spent nearly every day together for 3 years, planning a future that would never happen now. What secret could exist in the space between us? "Perhaps you should sit down," Marion suggested, and the gentle concern in her voice frightened me more than any harsh words could have. I lowered myself back onto the bench, the box now resting on my lap. Marion sat beside me, leaving a careful distance between us. For a moment, we both watched the empty schoolyard, the place where her son and I had built a life together. "Nathan was going to surprise you," she finally said, her voice steady despite the emotion I could see building behind her eyes. "He was planning something for your anniversary next month." I swallowed hard. Our 4th anniversary would have been in November. We had talked about taking a trip somewhere, maybe to the coast. Just vague plans that would never materialize now. He was always terrible at keeping secrets, Marion continued with a sad smile. He was so excited about it that he told me everything. I think he needed someone to share it with, someone who wouldn't tell you. My fingers tightened around the edges of the box. What was it? Marion reached into her coat pocket and pulled out a small velvet box, the kind that unmistakably holds a ring. My breath caught in my throat. He had it made specially, she said, placing it in my palm. The stone is from his grandmother's ring. He was so proud of having thought of it. I stared at the box, unable to open it, unable to breathe. Nathan had never mentioned marriage. We had talked about moving in together. We were in the process of doing so when the accident happened, but he had never given any indication that he was thinking beyond that. I don't understand, I whispered. He never said anything. That was Nathan, Marion said with a soft, knowing laugh, always planning grand gestures. He wanted it to be perfect. With shaking fingers, I opened the ring box. Inside was a simple, silver band with a small emerald stone set flush against the metal. Elegant, understated, perfectly suited to my taste. Engraved inside were the words, "Every Tuesday, forever." Our inside joke. Our sacred day. The day we had met. The day we always reserved for each other no matter how busy life became. Tuesday dinners, Tuesday movies, Tuesday walks in the park, and now, Tuesday visits to the bench where it all began. The tears came then, hot and unstoppable. I hadn't cried since the funeral, keeping my grief locked tight inside a box much like the one on my lap. But now it spilled over, unconstrained and raw. "I'm sorry," I gasped between sobs. "I'm so sorry." Marion's arm came around my shoulders, her own tears falling silently. "Don't apologize," she said firmly. "Nathan would have hated that." We sat together as the school grounds emptied completely, sharing our grief in a way we hadn't been able to at the funeral, surrounded by well-meaning mourners and the stiffness of formality. Here, on this bench, we were just two people who had loved the same man in different but equally profound ways. Eventually, my tears subsided, leaving me drained but somehow lighter. I wiped my eyes and looked down at the box on my lap. "What's in here?" I asked, running my hand over my name in Nathan's handwriting. Marion straightened up, composing herself. "That's for you to discover," she said. Nathan always kept boxes of mementos. He was sentimental that way. I nodded, remembering the shoebox of movie tickets and restaurant receipts he kept on his bookshelf. "Thank you for bringing it to me." "There's one more thing," Marion said, reaching into her purse. She pulled out a sealed envelope. "We found this with his important papers. It's addressed to you." The envelope was heavy cream-colored stationery, the kind Nathan used for special occasions. My name was written on the front, but this time, not in Nathan's handwriting. "I don't understand," I said, turning the envelope over in my hands. "Nathan asked his father to write the address," Marion explained. "He said his own handwriting was too recognizable and he wanted it to be a surprise when it arrived in the mail." The implication of her words sank in slowly. This was meant to arrive after he proposed? Marion nodded, her eyes now dry but reddened. He had it all planned out. The proposal was just the beginning. I slid my finger under the seal, careful not to tear the paper. Inside was a single sheet, covered in Nathan's familiar script. My heart contracted painfully at the sight of it. These words from beyond the grave, written when he had no idea how prophetic they would be. "My dearest love," the letter began. "If you're reading this, then you've made me the happiest man alive by agreeing to be my wife." The words blurred as fresh tears filled my eyes. I folded the letter carefully and returned it to the envelope. I would read it later in private when I could absorb every word without breaking apart completely. "He loved you very much," Marion said quietly. "I want you to know that his father and we were so happy he found you." This was unexpected. At the funeral, Marion had been distant, almost cold. I had assumed she blamed me somehow, though the accident had nothing to do with me. Nathan had been driving home from a conference when a truck driver fell asleep at the wheel, crossing the center line. It was quick, they told me. He didn't suffer. I thought you resented me, I admitted, looking at her directly for the first time. Marian shook her head firmly. No, never. I was angry at the world, at God, at fate, but never at you. You brought so much joy to his life. She reached out and took my hand, her grip surprisingly strong for such slender fingers. I know this doesn't make any of it easier. Nothing can. But I thought you should know what he was planning. What he felt. I nodded, unable to speak past the lump in my throat. We sat in silence for a few more minutes, connected by our shared loss and the box of memories between us. Finally, Marian stood. I should go. James, Nathan's father, is waiting in the car. She hesitated, then added, Perhaps you could come to dinner sometime. We have so many stories about Nathan as a boy that I'm sure he never told you. I'd like that, I said, surprised to find that I meant it. Marian touched my shoulder briefly, then turned and walked away, her posture straight despite the burden she carried. I watched until she disappeared around the corner of the school building. Left, alone with the box and the ring, I didn't immediately open either. Instead, I sat on the bench as twilight deepened around me, feeling Nathan's presence more strongly than I had since his death. When I finally did open the cardboard box, I found it filled with a carefully curated collection of our life together. Movie ticket stubs from our first date to see a foreign film neither of us understood but pretended to enjoy. The cork from the wine bottle we'd shared the night I told him I loved him for the first time. Photographs of us hiking, laughing, dancing, at a friend's wedding. A pressed flower from the bouquet he'd given me on our second anniversary. At the bottom of the box lay a small worn notebook. I recognized it as the one Nathan always carried in his jacket pocket, jotting down ideas for experiments or quotes from books I'd recommended. I opened it hesitantly, feeling like an intruder even though it had been left for me to find. The pages were filled with his thoughts, observations, and dreams, many of them about me, about us. Plans for trips we'd take someday, ideas for my birthday gifts, notes about little things I'd said that he wanted to remember. The last entry was dated just 3 days before the accident. It read simply, She said she'd never been to Paris. Change of honeymoon plans. Research hotels with views of the Eiffel Tower. I closed the notebook, overwhelmed by the future that would never be. But amid the crushing grief was something else. A profound gratitude for having been loved so completely, even if for too short a time. The school grounds were dark now, the security lights casting long shadows across the pavement. I gathered my treasures, the box, the ring, the letter, and stood. For the first time since Nathan's death, I felt a tiny spark of something other than sorrow. Not happiness, not yet, but perhaps the possibility of it, someday. As I walked toward the parking lot, I realized that I would continue to come here every Tuesday, not just to remember what I had lost, but to honor what I had found. The bench where we met would always be sacred ground, a place where love had sprung into being and changed the course of my life forever. The next Tuesday, when I returned to our bench, I brought Nathan's notebook and a pen of my own. I began to write him letters, things I wished I could tell him, memories I was afraid of forgetting, the small daily triumphs and defeats that made up a life without him. It became my ritual, my way of keeping him close. 6 months later, I received a letter from a publishing house. They were interested in a manuscript Marian had sent them, a collection of letters written to a lost love, paired with Nathan's own writings. She had asked my permission, of course, before sharing what I had written in that notebook, but I had never expected anything to come of it. Your story could help so many people who are grieving, the editor wrote. There's a raw honesty here that speaks to the universal experience of loss and the enduring power of love. I sat on our bench, holding the letter, wondering what Nathan would think of our private thoughts being shared with the world. I could almost hear his laugh, see the excitement in his eyes at the prospect of this unexpected adventure. What do you think? I asked aloud, looking up at the sky. Should we do it? A sudden breeze rustled the leaves of the oak tree, sending a shower of golden light dancing across the pavement. I smiled, taking it as my answer. Sometimes love stories don't end the way we expect them to. Sometimes they don't end at all, but transform into something new and unexpected. My Tuesday ritual continues, though now I come not just to remember but to write, to transform our grief into something that might light the way for others walking similar paths. If you've ever lost someone you loved, or found a connection that changed you forever, I hope our story reminds you that love leaves indelible marks on our hearts. Those marks may hurt, but they also heal, connecting us across time and space in ways we never imagined possible. Share your own story of unexpected connection in the comments below. What began for me as a private ritual of remembrance has shown me the power of shared experience. Like and subscribe if you want to join me on this journey of healing through storytelling. Every Tuesday I'll be here, turning grief into gratitude, one memory at a time.